Is La Nina fading? Let's find out. I am Mark Sponsler, and welcome to the Stormsurf Video Surf Forecast for the week starting Sunday, February 23rd. Stormsurf, waves, weather, buoys, altimetry, snow, temperatures, El Nino, weather analysis, essential data for outdoor people, all the time, no hype. If you enjoy the video, give us a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Click the Stormsurf icon down in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. If you have a comment or a question, write it up down below. We'd be happy to hear from you. And if you'd like to make a small contribution to the cause, you may. Hit the super thanks button down below. The heart with the $ in it. With that, I'd like to thank the folks that donated last week. Tim Caston, Our Predicament, Peter Carpenter, and Evolution Moto. These are our longtime contributors. Thank you all so much. And then Nadine and Clay Goose are two fairly regular new contributors. We appreciate your contributions as well. With that, let's get to work. We're going to start by looking at significant wave heights for the entire planet, starting in the North Pacific. Remnants of a gale fading here somewhere north of Hawaii and in the Gulf of Alaska, 20-foot seas. This is part of a system that developed and has been tracking across the Pacific for almost a week now. Really no meaningful swell is expected from it, or whatever there is actually hitting Hawaii now. Actually, good-sized waves in the North Shore of Oahu, but not so much expected for California. It's going to be masked. We'll get into that in a minute. New gale starting to develop also just west of the date line with about 26-foot seas showing up there. The South Pacific, nothing yet, though this little area here of seas in the 18, 19-foot range, we're going to keep our eye on that because something is forecast from that in the next couple of days. In the North Atlantic, another in a series of strong gales just off the coast of Ireland with 35-foot seas, actually 35.9 feet right here. The highest seas over this entire domain, so you know exactly where it is. And the winds are supposedly 50 knots, so that's nearly at storm status. And then let's see, also in the South Atlantic, pretty quiet pattern there. Indian Ocean, little gale with 20-foot seas. Looks like some sort of a tropical system south of Indonesia. And but in all, pretty quiet given the time of year. But first, let's go take a look at current conditions. We're going to start up in off of Oregon, between Oregon and Washington, the Grays Harbor buoy, number 036 off the Columbia River there. We're looking at all the energy that's hitting that buoy, all the way up from 33.3 second period, really long period energy, the whole way down to 5 second period. That'd be basically pure wind chop. This is the height in feet in each of the period bands stretched between that 33 second period and 5 second period interval. We see kind of a spike here at 11 feet, so there must be some sort of swell there, and maybe something in the 9 second period range. We do some fancy math, see if it can tease out exactly what's going on. Primary swell, 4.9 feet at 11.7 seconds from 265 degrees. Theoretically, that would make surf at 5.8 feet. And then there's some secondary swell in there too, 5.3 feet at 8.4 seconds from, again, like a southwest direction, theoretically making surf 4.5 feet. And kind of go to look at the cams, and it looked like a couple of feet overhead and pretty wild and woolly up there. Working our way south, we go to Point Reyes, there just north of San Francisco. Point Reyes buoy number 029. We see a very similar profile, but a little bit like later, what's hitting up north has been already there for a day. It takes about a day to get down here. We see a spike somewhere here in the 12 to 13 second period range, that from swell that hit yesterday. And then we see the same sort of wind swell pattern trailing off from there. Primary swell, 5.3 feet at 12.9 seconds from 290 degrees, making surf theoretically 6.8 feet. I think this morning it might have been even up to 3 feet overhead sort of thing. And then the secondary wind swell, 5.5 feet at 9.9 seconds from 287 degrees, and that adding about 5 feet of warble into what would otherwise be a pretty clean bit of swell. Heading down to Southern California, the Point Loma South buoy, 191 there off of San Diego. Same sort of pattern, the period pushed up a little bit more and size attenuated by the Channel Islands. See a little bump here somewhere around the 15, 16 second period range. Another one out at 13 seconds, and then the wind swell mixed in. Primary swell, 3.4 feet at 12.7 seconds from 275 degrees, theoretically making surf at 4.3 feet. That would be, I'll give it shoulder high sort of thing. And secondary swell, 2 feet at 16.1 seconds from 238 degrees, and theoretically, you know, like waist high surf. There are definitely waves chest to shoulder high, maybe head high at top spot in Southern California this morning. And finally over to the north shore of Oahu, the Waimea Bay buoy on the north shore there, buoy number 106. We see a much stronger swell pattern, new swell hitting and building as we speak. You can see right here the main energy centered at 15.4 seconds, but little bits of energy out to 20 seconds on the high side and down into probably about the 11-second range on the low side. Primary swell, 8 feet at 14.8 seconds from 308 degrees, theoretically making surf 12 feet. There was definitely some large waves at top spots on the north shore of Oahu just an hour ago. And secondary swell, again, this doesn't really even count, 3.7 feet at 11.5 seconds from 311 degrees, adding some 4-foot more northerly component kind of wind swell into the mix. All right, so let's go see what has been going on for the past week. We're looking at the significant wave heights, the highest 1/3 of all waves in the ocean. We're starting in the North Pacific. We're going back to last Sunday when we made our last video. The 16th of February, a gale developed here. It actually pushed off Japan even earlier than that. Slowly made its way across the Pacific, and then I'm calling this a tertiary gale because that swell that the energy you saw before, that was really secondary energy. The main energy was even before a week ago off Japan. The final bit pushed across through the Gulf of Alaska with 26, 27-foot seas. That was on Wednesday, Thursday. That swell has already hit. That hit California Friday night into Saturday morning and is fading now on Sunday. A new gale developed on Friday, the 21st, near the dateline, and with, what's that, 26, yeah, about 26-foot seas. See the leading edge of that swell on early Saturday, and then you can see it hitting Oahu, well, that Kauai, and there's Oahu as we speak. You know, now this was not a particularly well-organized system. I mean, 24, 25-foot seas, but good enough to produce swell. That swell is also bound for the U.S. West Coast, and that gets us to current time. Let's go look down south. Going back a week, southeast of New Zealand, there was a gale with 25-foot seas that lifted northeast. Small energy from that is pushing north, bypassing Hawaii, because most of it, you can see it here, it was, well, Hawaii's about at 158 west. I mean, by the time the gale actually got organized, it was, for the most part, bypassing Hawaii. So little tiny swells is expected in for Southern California this week, but I suspect most of it's going to be obscured by other swell unless you get incredibly lucky. Oh, notice that. This is this weird ice anomaly thing that keeps showing up in the models. I'm not sure exactly what's going on. It's not on our side. It's on somewhere over on NOAA. But anyway, after that, things pretty much quieted down. Let's just get us to where we are right now. Now, oops, here is that little blip of something we're going to look at in the forecast moving forward. But for now, pretty quiet pattern. Can't say that, though, about the North Atlantic. It's been on a tear. The jet stream just raging, pushing off the U.S. East Coast, lifting north up somewhere like near Ireland or so, the storm track. So this is Sunday, the 16th of February. You see 36-foot seas, and then those faded off. You see the swell front just impacting everywhere from Morocco up into Ireland, that area. Here we go. Another system pretty much following the same track on Wednesday with 36-foot seas, and the swell basically going for the same targets. Here we are on Saturday, yesterday, another gale with 40-foot seas, and let's see, building, no, right at about 40 foot. There we go, doing the same track. It's just like a machine. This is pretty typical of La Nina. La Nina in winter months in the northern hemisphere favors the Atlantic, not so much the Pacific. That's why you kind of got to be thankful for everything you can get in the Pacific this winter. Going to the South Atlantic, we'll just plow through this because I believe I reviewed it, and it's a pretty quiet pattern. Yeah, there's a little gale there off of Antarctica with 35-foot seas. That was on Thursday, just a couple of days ago. And let's see, oh, there we go. And that was about it. So really nothing expected. And over the past week, the Indian Ocean, a little bit more active, but nothing like that really jumps out that gets your attention. Yes, another little gale there with 35-foot seas, but that pretty long ways away from everywhere. Another little system under South Australia on Saturday with 27-foot seas. And there we are, current time. So all in all, pretty quiet in the Southern Hemi, not unexpected given the time of year. All right, so we're going to do a deep dive on the North Pacific. We're going to start by looking at jet stream level winds. These winds up about 30,000 feet help support the formation of gales when the gales form, help direct their track. We're looking for a trough, a dip in the jet to the south like that. You don't see it anywhere. I mean, maybe kind of a little bit right there. But typically what that would do, though, is if you have a dip, it creates a counterclockwise flow aloft, basically an eddy pattern. That also manifests itself down at the ocean surface. Of course, counterclockwise circulation in the northern hemisphere is the indicator of low pressure. And of course, low pressure, if it's strong enough, creates winds. Those winds get traction on the ocean surface, imparting energy to the ocean, creating seas. Those seas, as they radiate away from the fetch area, the lesser period elements dissipate off because they don't have energy, and the longer period elements get exposed. And of course, that creates swell, and when swell, when it hits your beach, makes surf. But all that said, we don't have a trough, but the jet stream, 170, 180 knots, blowing flat west-east to a point almost, what is that, 750 miles off of San Francisco. That is a good, solid jet stream flow. Even without a trough, we kind of already know what the deal is, right? You've seen multiple low pressures on the wave models. So the jet is supporting low pressure and gale development in seas. Winds build as we get Monday into Tuesday to 180 knots. You see the beginnings. Here we go. A trough moving into the Gulf on Tuesday evening to Wednesday. Another trough building west of the dateline. First trough fades out. Notice the jet is split, though. This provides, for the most part, I guess it's a good thing, no rainfall into the U.S. West Coast and lighter winds. It depends if you want to surf or if you want to ski, right? But the next trough gets going, pushing into the Western Gulf on Wednesday night into Thursday, being supported by 180, 190 knot winds. That certainly should kick up some surf. And then that gale fades out on Saturday, the 1st of March, but another trough starts forming over the dateline on Saturday. Now notice the jet, not nearly as strong, almost split, but holding together, a lot of momentum. I mean, this has been the pattern the entire winter with this jet just going flat off of the maritime continent, making it somewhere to a point north of Hawaii and then splitting. And then rarely when the active phase of the MJO gets into play, it feeds the jet stream, pushes the jet at times for a week or two into California, making some rain. And then when the MJO fades out, the jet weakens again. Whoops. And so the last frame there, another little trough on late Sunday, the 2nd of March, forming over the dateline. So plenty of potential good jet stream flow aloft, supportive of gale development. So let's go down to the surface. Surface level pressure, surface level winds. As expected, we knew there was some sort of remnant energy here in the Gulf of Alaska, 30-knot west winds, generating some seas, all pushing towards California, already bypassing Hawaii. Or the swell, actually, I should say, is peaking at Hawaii from that. New gale developing on the dateline with 35 to 40 knot west winds. So we get into Monday, that gale organizes a little bit better, another area of 40 knot winds. Now notice a secondary gale forms off of Oregon on Monday with, well, there's 1 pixel of 55 knot winds as before it pushes inland Tuesday morning. Let's go back now. The secondary gale north of Hawaii, 45 knot winds, and that's about the most it does, pushing towards the U.S. West Coast. Yet another gale 48 hours out on Tuesday, forming on the dateline with 50. Can we get some more out of that? You can't see it. I almost think there's There we go, 55 knot winds, maybe even 60 knot winds. So that would be a storm pushing over the dateline aimed at Hawaii and the U.S. West Coast on Wednesday, pushing into the Gulf late Wednesday night and into Thursday, and then fading out. After that, sort of a weak secondary low develops behind that on Friday over the dateline with 35 to 40 knot northwest winds, but not looking nearly as strong as its predecessors. Some secondary energy forecast in the mix as well as we get into Sunday on the dateline. So we'll see. We know the Jetstream's supposed to get weaker. One would expect the gale track to weaken. But for the coming 5 days or so, things look quite interesting indeed. Let's go look at the effects of those winds on the ocean surface. All right, significant wave heights for the North Pacific, the forecast. We already saw where we're at today. As we get into Monday, the gale off the U.S. West Coast fades some. The gale on the dateline builds a little with 27-foot seas, but notice the gale off of Oregon. So we get midday Monday, starts picking up with 30-foot seas, 30-foot seas there as well. This gale builds rapidly with 36-foot seas on Monday night. Does it get any? Nope, that's about as high as it gets. Now that's pretty north angled relative to California. We'll say down in central California. Be more like sideband energy, but some swell definitely should result, especially north of Point Reyes. It should be pretty large up there, but probably pretty raw. Next gale you see on Tuesday, pushing through the Gulf with 31 to 2-foot seas, then fading. The next one winding up on the dateline on Wednesday. Let's just go back and see. 40-foot seas on Wednesday morning, building to 45 feet, 45 feet, and then 48 feet on Wednesday night. I mean, that's pretty high seas indeed if it actually happens. We'll see. You know, the models tend to overhype it and back off a little bit. Still, you can see there's a swell front pushing towards Hawaii as we get into near a Thursday night, early Friday morning, then ultimately bound for the U.S. West Coast. After that, things fade. A little weaker gale with 24-foot seas targeting mainly Hawaii, probably too far away from the U.S. West Coast. We're into Saturday and Sunday, and then things start quieting down after that. So this theoretically could be the last hurrah for the winter in terms of anything with size. So definitely I'd try to make the most of whatever you can get here. Then we go to the South Atlantic, this little area of 18, 19-foot seas off east of New Zealand, pretty far to the north. So we get into Monday. It starts developing with 24-foot seas, building to 28, almost 29-foot seas. Now notice you're here, you're seeing, well, let's go back one more. You're seeing 39 feet, but that's related to a tropical system up here. This is really our main focus for the potential for generating southern hemi swell targeting, well, maybe Hawaii, but really the U.S. West Coast down into like Mexico and Central America and maybe even further south than that. 29-foot seas and then up to 35 feet and then 36 feet on Tuesday morning, the 25th of February, and holding pretty well into the afternoon, and then fading from there while starting to fall south. So definitely some southern hemi swell could result from this at select protected south-facing breaks, assuming all this magic happens. I mean, that's always a bit of a risk, but we're only 48 hours out now. Models normally do a pretty good job. Notice some other sort of a low tries to organize about a week out, but nothing really aimed off to the north, so nothing expected from that. It seems, though, like the southern hemi is meagerly trying to come online, and it's still just late February. It's pretty early in the season. To the North Atlantic, yes, we have another gale passing Ireland with 36-foot seas or so. That one fades out. Do we get another? Well, it looks like one tries to organize. Again, not quite as organized. Seas in the 38-foot range, really targeting more Ireland than down into Portugal and that area. In fact, look at that, 40-foot seas aimed due east. You know where to be. You know where that's going to go. And another one behind that, we're into Sunday, the 2nd of March, and it's a machine for the far North Atlantic. For the South Atlantic, we'll run through this pretty quick. I haven't actually reviewed it, but I think the pattern is pretty quiet, not unexpectedly. There's a bit of a gale way south of South Africa. I don't think much energy will result pushing north from that. And another one behind that on Monday the 3rd, but all energy aimed at Antarctica. And then the South Indian Ocean will put this into motion. You see a tropical system falling south, but it's just going to get kind of sheared off. Another one off of Madagascar. A little bit of a gale with 30-foot seas south of southwest Australia. And where are we at? We're into Saturday here. Broader sort of system trying to organize theoretically a week out. That'd be Sunday night, the 2nd of March, south of South Australia again. Maybe potential there, but that's a week out. Don't know if I trust the models on that. Next up, the local wind forecast for California. So there's Southern California. That's Point Conception there. There's more, Monterey Bay, San Francisco Bay. So, and then up here, Northern California, Hawaii, right in this area. Today, Sunday, light wind regime northwest for California. Winds were only like 5 or 8 knots this afternoon out of the northwest. Light trades for the Hawaiian Islands as swell hits there. Monday, light wind regime, trade wind for Hawaii. Pretty much the same thing relative to California, though. Notice this strong low pressure system here off of Oregon Monday night. Moving inland on Tuesday, high pressure tries to build a little bit in behind, and you get that northwest wind regime on Tuesday down in central California. Low pressure filling the Gulf. Some sort of a light north wind regime for the Hawaiian Islands. Wednesday, now notice the lows very close to the Hawaiian Islands. You start drawing that southerly flow up over the islands. Not too bad, though. Light wind regime for California. Thursday, again, a light wind regime for California. A little low pressure trying to organize off the coast. That light south flow still for the Hawaiian Islands. Friday, same deal for California. Light south flow for the Hawaiian Islands. Saturday, again, light winds for California. South flow for Hawaii. And we get to Sunday and pretty much still the same thing. High pressure trying to organize, maybe trying to build trades a little bit more for the Hawaiian Islands. But all in all, not a strong wind pattern either for Hawaii or California. Rain forecast for California. You see rain pushing into the Cape Mendocino area. There's San Francisco Bay there. This is on 18Z Sunday. That's as of right about right now. That rain lifting north. Probably, we'll see. And then the gale winding up off Oregon here. Another little dose of rain. Doesn't even make it down to Point Reyes on Monday night, and it clears out. High pressure takes over, and then we're just going to blast through this because we know the jet is split for the most part off California. There is some sort of a little backdoor low pressure system forecast and theoretically pushing some showers into Southern California on Friday night into maybe Saturday morning, but that's a week out again. I don't trust that. And then you see the same sort of pattern trying to reorganize on Sunday with rain for North California. We've got one more frame here. Don't know if it's going to make it into San Francisco. We don't know whether any of this is going to happen at all, but we'll see. Jetstream, for the most part, driving everything well north of the U.S. West Coast. The snow forecast dashboard for Palisades, Tahoe, formerly Squaw Valley. You do see some accumulation. It was about 8 or 9 inches, something like that. This is out March 3rd, so we're beyond, we're about a week out from today. Confidence in that is almost non-existent. We go down to Kirkwood. I mean, that's South Lake Tahoe, South Lake Tahoe. Same sort of deal. And then down to Mammoth, maybe 5 inches, same sort of profile. And then we go look at the freeze level for Palisades, Tahoe. This is the base of Squaw or Palisades at 6,200 feet. This is the summit, top of Granite Chief, and the Palisades at about 9,000 feet. Red would be, if there were precipitation, it's liquid above 32 degrees. The gray, sleet, like 35 to 32 degrees. The interface between the gray and the white line is the 32-degree freeze line, and then blue is 28 degrees or lower. You can see basically the freeze line almost up to the summit the whole way into the 25th of February, and then up to 10,500 feet the whole way out to the 1st. So we're into next weekend. And then finally after that, as you get into like maybe Sunday, Monday, freeze levels down to 5,500 feet, and still sleetish kind of conditions at the base of Palisades Tahoe. So a continuation of that warm pattern, though colder about a week out. So let's go take a look at the surf forecast for a couple of select locations. This is not a surf spot forecast. It's a generalized forecast for an area. Again, our deal is we don't try to forecast for one particular spot, because all that does is bring a bunch of crowds and a bunch of people, and nobody likes that. It just ruins the experience for everyone. So the idea here is give you a general idea on swell trends and wind conditions, and then using your local knowledge, well, if a swell is X direction and 10 feet at 15 seconds, and the period, and the period and the swell direction, everything, you would know where to go because you've surfed all the spots in your local area. We are not going to spoon feed it to you. You have to have a little bit of common sense and a little bit of wave knowledge. All right, so we're going to start up here at Columbia River, generalized North Oregon, South Washington area. You see first swell coming in, gale off the coast there, 23-foot surf, but also notice winds out of the south at 40 knots. I mean, that's just blowing hard. That would be on Monday night into Tuesday. Things back off as you get into Wednesday, but then Thursday, another swell comes in. Swell heights surf heights in the 16-foot range on Thursday, fading out as you get into Friday. Then Saturday, back up, 20-foot surf, and slowly working its way down from there. Wind speeds far more moderate as you get later in the week. Pure swell heights, here we go, 15 feet at 15 seconds on Tuesday, moderating back up to 10 at 16 on Thursday, that fading down, then up to 11 at 18 on Saturday. So 3 different swell events targeting the Pacific Northwest. Then we go down to Ocean Beach, San Francisco, same sort of pattern. Swell coming in, 16-foot surf on Tuesday, fading out, rebuilding on Thursday to 12 to 13 feet, fading out, and then rebuilding again to maybe 14 feet on Saturday. Winds, first event, northwest at 15 knots. The second one, pretty moderate indeed. And the last one, pretty moderate indeed as well. Swell heights, 11 feet at 15 seconds on the first swell, 8 feet at 15 seconds for the second swell, and 8 feet at 17 seconds, maybe even longer for the third one next weekend. Going to San Diego, exact same sort of pattern, just shifted off about 24 hours and chopped the size in half due to the Channel Islands. Surf heights, 6 feet as we get into Wednesday, fading, then back up to about 5 feet on Friday, fading, then up to maybe 6 feet on Sunday. I'm trying to look around the microphone there. Wind pattern, not really an issue. Swell heights, 4 feet at 15 seconds. 3 feet at 15 seconds and 3.8 feet at nearly 18 seconds. So a bit of energy there. North shore of Oahu, well, just take everything and wind it back 48 hours because Oahu is closer to the storm center. So they're getting the first swell now. Surf heights 10 feet and pretty glorious indeed. Next one comes in on Wednesday in the 11-foot range. And then a larger one, theoretically, on Friday with surf heights in the 14-foot range. Notice the wind arrows here out of the south for a good portion of that time in the 10 to 15 knot range. So trade's kind of collapsing. Swell heights, 14 to 15 seconds today. Next one comes in 7 feet at 15 seconds. Final one comes in 9.5 feet at 15 seconds, sort of thing. A little bit more of a glancing blow. Central Ireland, just a generic kind of a forecast. 40-foot surf on early Monday, Monday morning, first thing. Fading down, then things back off for a while, then back up into the 30-foot range on Saturday, Sunday. The winds blowing incessantly, 25 to 30 knots, 30 pretty much the entire time. Swell heights, 25 feet at 16 seconds, slowly working their way down as period drops off and in the 8 feet, 9 feet, 11-second range, then back up to 20 feet at 16 seconds next weekend. So no shortage of swell energy. And then finally, central Portugal. Again, this is not for any one specific site, and it does not include any of the amplification you get from if you have swell enhancing bathymetry, which could easily double the size of any of this, but you get the general idea. 20-foot surf as we get into Monday, swell or surf slowly trickling down back up into the 11-foot range on Friday, and again 11 feet on Sunday. Winds, of course, always some sort of an issue, but it doesn't look horrendous. Swell sizes, 12 feet at 17 seconds, 6.8 feet at 13 seconds, 7.2 feet at 15 seconds. All right, let's go take a look long term. Specifically, we're talking about the title of the video is La Nina fading. We're going to get into that. We're going to look at the two major weather oscillations that affect weather and swell and snow production. The MJO, the Madden-Julian Oscillation, and the El Nino Southern Oscillation. We'll start off with the MJO. The Madden-Julian Oscillation, there are two phases, the active phase and the inactive phase. They rotate about 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off, depending on where you are on the planet. Active phase on one side of the planet, inactive phase on the other. They rotate around the planet west to east on the equator. So it takes about 4 to 5 weeks for the active phase to make its transit across the Pacific. Then it's typically followed by the inactive phase with 4 to 5 weeks moving west to east across the Pacific again. During La Nina years in the Pacific, it seems like the inactive phase is stronger and dominates in the Pacific. During El Nino years, the active phase dominates and is stronger. The active phase is our friend. That's the one we're most interested in because it is effectively a low pressure system. So when it moves over the equatorial Pacific, because it's a low pressure system, it sucks warm, moist air at the ocean surface on the equator, high up in the atmosphere. That gets caught by the jet stream, energizes the jet stream, makes for a stronger jet stream, and therefore stronger storms and more potential for snow. During La Nina years, high pressure dominates the inactive phase. It's a high pressure system. It has sinking air. That sinking air cuts off the flow of moisture up to the jet stream. You end up with a weaker jet stream, a split jet stream, and less storm production over the Pacific. Now, we are going to look for signs of the active or inactive phase using data from the TAA buoy array, a series of buoys that are strung across the equator used for monitoring El Nino, but they have wind sensors on those buoys, and they give us an indication of what's going on. All right, this is the East Pacific here, West Pacific here. Here is the equator. That is New Guinea there. The date line's roughly there. We're just looking at the arrows, and they give you a relative 5-day average wind speed. So these arrows suggest moderate easterly trades, not any particularly big deal across the East Pacific. Central Pacific maybe getting to near strong status, and pretty much strong status in the West Pacific. That's the average winds. The anomalies is the difference from normal for this time of year, and that's how you tease out the MJO. Now notice, trades are out of the East, but the anomaly for this time of year suggests these winds are actually out of the West, maybe suggesting the active phase is here in the East Pacific. That's not really where we want it. It's best over the date line, but that's what this suggests. And then you see kind of a normal trade pattern over the Central Pacific, and if anything, winds just a little bit stronger out of the East and the West Pacific. The Kelvin wave generation area, I call it. During El Nino, it's where you produce Kelvin waves, but it's really in the West Pacific here, pretty much from just east of the date line the whole way over as far as you can go towards the maritime continent. When the active phase is here and anomalies are strong out of the west, that's where you really pump piles of energy into the jet stream in this area. So the jet stream rages as it goes downstream north of Hawaii and in the U.S. West Coast. That's when you get weather and all kinds of big surf and that sort of thing. Let's go look at the forecast going 2 weeks out. Here we are, 850 millibar zonal wind anomalies. All that is are the trades stronger out of the east or out of the west than normal? The blues stronger out of the east. That means enhanced trades. We don't want that. We want the reds. The reds suggest weaker than normal trades, if not westerly anomalies. But now this is the whole planet on one chart. So let's get ourselves oriented. 180, that is the international date line. I assume everyone knows where that is. The far west Pacific starts the very entry point into the West Pacific at about 125 east, so right here. The main Kelvin wave generation area, the area in the West Pacific where if the active phase is over that area, that's where it does the most to goose up the jet stream. So it's from here to about here, the whole way up the chart. Now this is January 24th. You see we had strong easterly anomalies. Easterly anomalies, enhanced trades, that would be the inactive phase of the MJO. Then starting about February 11th, notice the easterly anomalies faded. You even got little pockets of westerly anomalies. And then westerly anomalies started building 120 west, that's south of California. So this looks like the active phase of the MJO in this region here. Okay, so that's what's been happening. No wonder the jet stream is getting stronger. No wonder the storm models, there's a bit of a lag, right? It's not instantaneous. The MJO takes about a week to really get traction in the Pacific. And then even when it's under its foundations start fading, it still lingers for about a week beyond. And so you see what's happening. Today, looks like the active phase of the MJO is fading in the main Kelvin wave generation area and setting up south of California as the inactive phase starts rebuilding over the Kelvin wave generation area. And that's to hold for the next 2 weeks. Here's the same sort of forecast going out 2 weeks, but instead of showing the east-west component of the wind, this is areas favorable for precipitation. If you have the active phase of the MJO pushing warm, moist air aloft, well, that's going to hit cold air up at the jet stream level. It's going to condense and create clouds. So this shows you where you have more clouds than normal. The blues cloudier, that'd be the active phase of the MJO. The oranges and reds, well, if you have sinking air, you're not going to get any clouds at all. You're going to have clear sky, a lot of sunlight reflecting off the ocean surface, and that's the inactive phase. So South America, Central America, there's Africa over there. Hawaii, the equator right there. Date line right there. So this is all the Pacific maritime continent right there. So it looks like the active phase over the date line starting to move into the East Pacific with the inactive phase over the maritime continent, trying to start easing into the West Pacific. 5 days out, same pattern. MJO, active phase barely holding on. 10 days from now, it's south of California. Strong inactive phase in control of the maritime continent and holding 15 days out. So basically 2 weeks. Now, this is the statistic model. The dynamic model, like the GEFS model, basically painting the same picture, but here 15 days out, a little bit weaker pattern as compared to here, but you're kind of splitting hairs. So basically, it looks like we have another 5 days of the active phase, and then it fades out. Inactive phase takes over, and that probably means a quieting down of the storm production machine and a weakening of the jet stream. Phase diagrams for the same two models, statistic model here, dynamic model here. This chart just shows you where the active phase is and how strong it is. Okay, the MJ moves from west to east, from the Indian Ocean to the maritime continent, over the West Pacific to the East Pacific, under the United States, across the Atlantic, over Africa, then back to the Indian Ocean. So you can see in January where it was. The further these dots are away from this circle, the stronger the active phase of the MJO was. So pretty strong active phase on the 22nd of January here in the Indian Ocean. Doesn't do us any good. We need it to be in the Pacific. Then on the 10th of February, it was pretty strong here in the West Pacific. And today, well, here's where it is somewhere, oh, right there, basically over Africa. It's already, the core of it's already left the Pacific. And here's the forecast, 3 different members for the next 14 days, basically putting it over the Indian Ocean, anywhere from very weak to modest in strength. Per the statistic model. Dynamic model, pretty much saying the same thing, only not making it as far into the Indian Ocean as the statistic model. So if the active phase is here over the Indian Ocean, on the other side of the planet over the Pacific, probably the inactive phase is going to be taking over. The 40-day upper level precipitation or moisture content. Okay, South America here, New Guinea there, 0 is the equator, date line roughly right there. The greens area is favorable for precipitation. So this looks like active phase in the West Pacific till about the 5th of March, and then it really starts moving into the East Pacific. And then you go out and it's under or over the Atlantic, where the oranges are dry air, less favorable for precipitation, roughly equating to the inactive phase of the MJO. So you see the inactive phase setting up in the middle of March, pretty much going the whole way through the end of the model run, 40 days out, the 4th of April. So again, this sort of suggests that the next week or two is going to be our last hurrah. Here's the CFS model forecast going out 1 month. This is just 850 millibars zonal wind anomalies. You have the past here, the forecast down here. This is the whole plan on one chart. Again, date line runs right up the middle. Far West Pacific starts here at 125 east. The Pacific actually ends here at like 80 west. That would be where Ecuador is. Now this chart has the MJO indicated on it, the solid contour. If it's dotted, that means inactive phase. You see the blues, easterly anomalies. Here's the active phase, supposedly with westerly anomalies, and they didn't make it over the date line until they got to the far East Pacific. I mean, this is typical of La Nina. You got La Nina and a high pressure bias. We'll get into that in a minute. Just locked over the date line, so westerly anomalies can't make their full transit across the Pacific. That's why I say during La Nina years, the inactive phases are stronger. The active phase is pretty weak. Anyway, another inactive phase back in January. Here's our current active phase, just about all but gone. Give it about another 3 days over in the somewhere south of Hawaii. And whatever weak westerly anomalies it produced, that's gone. Then we have a period of no immediate MJO indicated, but easterly anomalies already building over the date line. Here comes the inactive phase by the 8th of March, and it pretty much takes over the Equatorial Pacific with strong easterly anomalies in control. So again, this suggests this window right in here is our sweet spot into about the 8th of March. Let's go look at one more model. Now, this is where things get really interesting, and we start speaking to the title of the video, which is La Nina, or Modoki La Nina, which was basically a sort of a La Nina, but really not a La Nina. Is it going to fade? Okay, we're going to start by the usual drill here, okay? Date line runs right up the middle. The past performance on this model is down here. The forecast is up here. Blues, easterly anomalies, yellow, westerly anomalies. You see, here we go. Here comes our current inactive phase with easterly anomalies. And you see easterly anomalies have dominated since at least November. But you notice you get here, March 27, and all of a sudden those easterly anomalies collapse and boom, westerly anomalies take over for all of April, May, and maybe beyond that. This is the first signs of the failure of La Nina. And this has been on the chart now for weeks. In fact, 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks out is theoretically all we have left of La Nina, and this model is not budging. This is a good sign. Let's overlay the MJO here. Okay, so here's our current active phase of the MJO, pretty much all but gone, making its way across the Pacific. Again, the date line right there. One last active phase, inactive phase, driving easterly anomalies into March 19th. And then here comes a very weak active phase of the MJO. It doesn't look like anything specific or impressive, but you notice the trades go neutral and then they start turning westerly. And even as we get into late April, with the presence of the inactive phase of the MJO, westerly anomalies continue, if not building over the date line. This is a very good sign. Now let's take it one step further. Let's look at the low and the high pressure bias here. The dotted contour, high pressure bias. This is the typical La Nina indicator. It means high pressure, there's the date line, over the date line, even in the presence of these multiple active phases. And we have 1, 2, 3 contours. This actually was a very late starting La Nina. I mean, it really didn't get going until the middle of January. We're at the peak of it right now. But notice this, April 4th, the third contour disappears. By April 20th, the second contour disappears. By April 28th, the remaining high-pressure contour starts pushing east to a point south of California. What's even better, and this model is consistently saying this, still, we're 4 weeks out, so we'll see. The solid contour, low-pressure bias, which has been right over the entrance, over the maritime continent, right over the entrance to the West Pacific. It's been driving the jet stream nonstop for months now, giving it momentum, at least letting it penetrate into the Pacific and to a point about north of Hawaii. But notice when you get here, April 20th or so, all of a sudden the contours start pushing east, and then you see low pressure, theoretically, the low pressure bias starting to return to the Pacific. Now, does that mean we're going to get some like mega swell type system happening as we get into May? I don't think so. But it definitely speaks to the title of the video that La Nina is fading, at least according to this model. So if all that's true, we're going to be able to start seeing signs of the La Nina fading in the Pacific. We're going to start by looking at subsurface temperatures. This is, again, data from the TAO buoy array, those buoys strung across the equator, East Pacific here, West Pacific here. The X's, you see them there. These are the actual anchor lines on the buoys. The X's are individual sensors going down 300 meters, like almost 1,000 feet into the ocean. They collect temperature data of the profile of where you have warm and cold water. During El Nino, you have more warm water generally in the East Pacific. During La Nina, trades are blowing stronger west to east, so all the warm water piles up in the West Pacific. You can see that here, the 28-degree isotherm. I think it's about where it was last week, somewhere between 175 and 173 east. The 24-degree isotherm has been pretty stable now for weeks. It was even like almost non-existent earlier in the East Pacific over here, but now steady, not thick, but steady, suggesting there is some warm water across the entirety of the West Pacific. It's not the actual water temperatures that matter, though. It is the anomalies, and here's where the beginning of the evidence starts appearing. Of course, warm water in the West Pacific, typical of La Nina, but also this warm water pool in the East Pacific. That's been present for months now. Classic kind of Modoki La Nina, where all your cold water is in the Central Pacific, but not in the East, not in the West. Now, we still have below normal anomalies here over in the East Pacific, but the extremeness or the extent of the really cool anomalies definitely is fading, becoming more isolated. These other cool anomalies further out away from the center are becoming weaker and weaker and less impressive as compared to weeks past. All right, and here's an animation using the same data, but also using satellite data. So here is the beginning, December 24th. Cold extent, you see as we get into February, less and less intense cold waters present, suggesting the fading of La Nina. Also, you want to sort of keep an eye on the warm anomalies here, building more and more, well, at least should be, there we go, building off to the west, getting traction in other places, isolating the cool pool more and more. Pentad sea level anomalies. These are not temperatures. Is the height of the ocean. Take out the waves, the wind waves, the tide. Is the sphere of the ocean higher or lower than normal? Why does that matter? If you have cold water at depth, down 100 meters, it contracts. It'll leave a divot on the ocean surface. Likewise, if you have warm water at depth, it expands, displaces water above it up some, creating a bump on the ocean surface. All right, so Chile, Peru, Ecuador, the Galapagos, Central America there. There's the equator, there's the date line, New Guinea right there. Negative anomalies are not temperatures again. These are pockets of, inferred pockets of cooler temperatures down deep in the ocean, and it's only 5 degrees north and south of the equator that really matter. I mean, you could stretch it and maybe say 7 degrees north and south, but you see little pockets of cooling, but not coherent, certainly not up along Ecuador, really kind of focused Out here more south of Hawaii, there's Hawaii up there. This is weaker and less than what was for the past couple of months, suggesting that La Nina is losing its grip. And this chart kind of all wraps it up in one box. This is the West Pacific here, East Pacific here. This is upper ocean heat content in the upper 300 meters of the ocean. So you see the blues colder than normal. This is the beginning of our La Nina back in March of 2024. One cool pulse, another, a third, a fourth, a fifth back in September. December, January, our last big pulse. You see there, it was pretty intense. Now we're into the current. See just the last shade of this blue, what is that? That is 0.5 to 1 degree below normal, lingering and a little bit more here at about 110, and almost neutral up here along Ecuador. Also notice westerly anomalies, or warmer than normal water driven by strong trades building in the west. At some point, when you get too much warm water here, it just overwhelms the trade winds, because if you have warm water here, you're not going to get strong trades over it. If anything, you're going to get a reversal of trades, and La Nina collapses, and then all this warm water starts flowing off to the east. That's typically what sets off El Nino. Now, there has not been near enough buildup here to build up a giant El Nino pool of warm water, but there also is a big reserve of warm water off in the maritime continent, in between all those islands there. So that's something we're going to keep our eyes on. There is more evidence for the demise of La Nina too by looking at the sea surface temperature anomalies. Difference from normal for this time of year. South America, Central America, New Guinea, the equator right there, dateline right there. There is our Modoki La Nina cool pool. A week ago, it extended the whole way over to here. Early this year, it was the whole way over here to the Galapagos. This whole little finger that was right here is gone, and it like vaporized in like 3 days. Now, that's probably some because the active phase of the MJO is over here creating westerly anomalies, which doesn't support upwelling. Back here, though, I mean, even in and around the core of the cool pool, it's looking cooler than normal. Now, the one caveat on all this, we have one more inactive phase of the MJO to push across the Pacific. The models, they say a month from now, all this is, westerly anomalies are supposed to be building. So we'll see how all this plays out. Let's go look at the trend for the past 7 days. Sea surface temperature trend for the past 7 days, all right? So Chile, Peru, Ecuador, Central America, Hawaii, New Guinea there, the equator right there, dateline right there. Just for the past 7 days, you see the building warming here, all in the East Pacific. Again, likely attributable to the active phase of the MJO, suppressing trades in this area, which in turn suppresses upwelling, which allows warm water to build. But even over the core of where this La Nina is supposed to be, there's one cool pocket. The rest of this is just a mix of basic, there's neutral at green. Might even be more on the flavor of the side of warming than even neutral. Let's go take a look at the trend line. Here's the trend line for the Nino 1.2 region, the region right there by Ecuador and the Galapagos Islands. You can see January 28th, roughly, temperatures got as cold as they were going to get in that region, down 1 degree below normal. We've been on a steady upward trend ever since. Today's value, 3/4 of a degree above normal, 714 thousandths of a degree above normal, and pretty much holding for the past week. Again, likely active phase of the MJO moving over that area. No big surprise, but still, we're nowhere in negative territory. The Nino 3.4 index, that's the official El Nino monitoring area on the equator, 5 degrees north and south of the equator, from a point south of California out to about the dateline. Today's value, 629 thousandths of a degree below normal. Weak or neutral El Nino or La Nina is 0.5 degree below to 0.5 degree above. Today, we're just barely in the weak category, which goes 0.5 to 1 degree. And you see for a month or so, we were in the medium category, 1 degree below to 1.5 degrees. But now we're pretty much past that. I'm kind of going to be surprised if we end up back down here. Maybe a little bit of backsliding with the coming in active phase of the MJO, but I'm not thinking too much. The corrected official Nino 3.4 sea surface temperature anomalies right here for the week of February 12th. This is weekly, 0.3 of a degree below normal. So neutral, effectively. Prior to that, 0.6, 0.8, 0.9, 0.6. So in weak La Nina territory, December 25th, so almost 2 months ago, we got down to -1. But other than that, almost every one of these has just been in weak La Nina status, and now we're not even there. What does the atmosphere think is going on? This is the difference in pressure between Darwin, Australia, and Tahiti, both with long-running barometric pressure records. If pressure is lower in Tahiti, which would be in the Pacific, then the index goes negative. Today's value, 4.42. I mean, that's kind of like middling. But you see, for about 8 or 10 days here, we were negative. This was probably the active phase of the MJO moving north of Tahiti. Prior to that, we were quite positive for quite a while, but there's a lot of noise in this number. The 30-day average sort of takes the noise out. You can more clearly see the fluxes in the MJO. So today's value, 8.88, that's definitely in La Nina territory. We were up at 13.68, something like that, in mid-February. Prior to that, we were down pretty low in neutral territory. And then the 90-day average, the clear La Nina El Nino indicator, plus 6.93. Where were we a month ago? Plus 5.38. So all this just suggesting weak La Nina territory. Let's look at a graph real quick. Here's the 30-day running average of the SOI, neutral, according to the Bureau of Meteorology from Australia. +7 to -7 is neutral. Today's value, you see it up here, it says like 20 or something. They use a little bit different way of measuring it. But the trend for, well, even during our El Nino back in 2023 was basically neutral. Here's our La Nina that we've been in for 2024. Trend line going up. But the models are suggesting that's about as far as we're going to go. From the CFS version 2 model, here are the Nino 3.4 sea surface temperature anomaly forecasts. So let's see, January, this is mid-January, mid-February was here, half a degree. But you see there was the sum total of our La Nina. I think this kind of understates how strong the La Nina really was, because this put us in weak category. Yes, I get it, but I don't know. It seemed like it was a little bit more than that. Anyway, you get the idea. As we get into March, temperature's going to maybe 0.15 degree below normal, then falling back a little bit in April, but a quarter of a degree below normal, effectively neutral, and then going up from there to almost half a degree above normal as we get into next fall. And I'll just go right here and look at the PDF corrected, effectively saying the same thing. Temperature's going up to +3 of a degree as we get into November. But there are other models. So here is every model known to man, the dynamic models and the statistic models. The dynamic model average has temperatures in June, July, and August, basically at dead neutral, and then dropping off into about -0.3 of a degree below normal. The statistic models want to go colder. There's the statistic average, which temperature is pretty much holding flat at about 0.6 of a degree below normal, continuing some sort of flavor of La Nina, and then dropping down to 0.8 degrees as we get into fall. Let's go look at the specific data here. Okay, the dynamic models, and I'm not going to go through every one of these, but these are February, March, April, May. You get the idea. It's a 3-month, the average, 0.411 today, going up to basically neutral as we get into May and July. And then here's that little dip back down in October, November, December. Notice the CFS model, the one we were looking at before, has temperatures right at dead even. They don't even show the numbers out this far. I'm not sure why. Maybe they don't believe it, but either way. So the CFS model, I honestly think it's a pretty good model. I think it beats most of these other models, but according to this trend line here, let's see if we can do this real quick. Where's the CFS? There it is. I don't know if you can see it. It's that gray little line right there. It's probably the warmest of all the models in terms of the forecast. Now, the statistic models, they're all trending at 0.6 of a degree, almost 0.8, back into weak La Nina status as we get into the coming fall. I mean, that's 8 months from now. And the average of all the models, you see it here, half a degree, more or less. So the question is, where do you want to put your money? Do you believe the CFS model, which I think is the best model of the bunch, or do you want to just look at every model from every country? That's the more conservative route, and that's typically how they do ensemble modeling. You take everything, you throw it in a basket, you shake it up, and you sort of take the average, because no one really wants to put their money on any one model. But I'll take a little gamble here and say I think the CFS model's done a pretty good job. The real key, I think, is what is it? A month from now, so that would be March 25th or so. If the model keeps showing westerly anomalies developing across the entirety of the Pacific Ocean, and that actually materialized, that would be a huge feather in the cap of the CFS model, because it's been saying this now for 6, 7, maybe even 8 weeks, that La Nina is going to completely collapse, where all the other models are like, I don't know, they're hemming or hawing, they can't make up their mind. Now, we are going to be moving into the spring unpredictability barrier here as we get later into March, and all the models have a hard time figuring out what La Nina or El Nino, what ENSO is going to do. But for right now, I'm going to put my my 1 penny bet on the CFS model that this La Nina, Modoki La Nina, as weird as it is, it's just going to die out, and that'll be the end of it. And then we're probably going to fall into some sort of an ENSO neutral pattern for next year. And that would be the first time that we would be in a neutral pattern in years. I mean, it's just been year after year of either La Nina or these radical swings towards 1 year of El Nino that doesn't materialize so strong, and then it collapses and you're right back into La Nina. I'm actually hoping that we do kind of just get into a neutral pattern, just to sort of help me feel a little more comfortable that we're not going to be in this whipsaw back and forth from one extreme to the other, though. All the long-term climate models suggest that's kind of going to become the pattern for the planet as we move forward. All right, but for the immediate future, another week of the active phase of the MJO feeding the Jetstream, so a whole series of storms are forecast. Surf on the way, maybe not so much rain, but take the surf, make the most of it, because I suspect that as the active phase fades out about a week and a half from now, 2 weeks from now, things are going to settle down considerably. Great. Yeah, it'd be great for going to work and taking care of that kind of business, but it's always nice to have some surf to look forward to. All right, that's our forecast for this week. If you enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Click the Stormsurf icon down below in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Comments or questions, always welcome. If you're not sure something, write it up down below. And of course, if you'd like to make a contribution to help the cause, you may use the super thanks button down below, the heart with a $sign in it. So with that, we are done for this week. We will do it again next week, same channel, same time. Thanks so much for donating and for watching.